Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Sorrow of Omega's Broken Heart. Episode 26. Book 3. Chapter 338 Royal Dinner. She will sit here with me because she is my woman. Delilah looked at Everett with wonder in her eyes. Did he just call me his woman? She thought and stared at him. How can you say that, Everett? The Queen asked him with a shaken tone. Delilah guessed that they had never seen Everett's this look before. How could they see? He only came here for his grandma after years. They don't look close to their son. Delilah gulped when the Queen glared at her. Calm down, Everett. She is your mother, you cannot talk to her like that in front of a low-key girl. Everett growled, which almost shook the whole table. Delilah touched his arm and tugged it. Just leave it. I can eat later. He turned his head to her. Did I tell you to speak? She shook her head and glanced at Grandma. She saw Grandma staring at Everett with a smile on her lips. She turned her eyes to Delilah. Delilah begged her with her eyes to control the situation. Everett, calm down, my child. Delilah is your woman. No one can separate her away from you. Grandma spoke out. Everett glared at Grandma, who smiled at him sheepishly. He closed his eyes and tried to calm himself. The king coughed and said, "Let's eat, everyone." Delilah glanced at the food. It was like a feast. She had never seen so many dishes all together like that. She was not from a rich family. Though her step-parents lived a lavish life, they treated her like a poor maid. She had to eat the leftovers most of the time. So for her, all those things were very new and stunning. A few maids came and started to serve everyone. When a maid came to serve Everett, he lifted his hand to stop the maid. He did not want to eat any more. He was just sitting there while looking at his grandmother. Everyone looked at Everett. Delilah also saw how Everett was sitting without eating anything. She pulled his plate and stood up. She filled his plate with steak and rice and then placed it in front of him. She sat down and continued to eat. Everett turned his head to her. She paused and turned to him. Let's eat together, okay? She mumbled softly like she always did. He stared at her for a moment, then looked away. He began to eat. That shocked others. They could not believe Everett, the beast of the forest, was listening to a young woman like her. Looks like you haven't forgotten your royal manner. You are eating nicely, the king said to Everett. Delilah paused when she heard that. Did he just mock Everett? Why? Just because he lives in a forest doesn't mean he eats like a beast. Isn't he Everett's father? Delilah did not like the tone of the king's words. She could see Everett's balled fist beside her. But on his face, he was indifferent, as if he did not care or it did not affect him at all. Tell me about yourself. The king spoke again. There is nothing to talk about, Everett replied. Why can't you just come back and stay with us? Everett laughed when he heard him. It was a laugh that made others shake from the core. Now do you really want me to stay here? He asked and looked at him. Why not? Ruling this kingdom is very easy for you then, Everett. The Queen warned. Everett frowned at her. Why do you always come between others? Or has it become your habit in the last 20 years? The Queen glared at him. Don't forget that. I am your mother. You. Delilah grabbed his arm once again. She was afraid that he would do something to the king or the queen. He would not think about his relationship with them, that was for sure. Delilah whispered to him, Everett, let's go back to the room. Everyone was stunned. Did she just call Everett by his name? However, Delilah was unaware of their thoughts. Everett was almost losing his control, but when she grabbed his arm he paused his mind. "Please," she requested loudly. He stood up and snatched his arm out of her hold and left the dining room. Delilah blinked her eyes. She thought she would go back together with him, but now everyone was looking at her. "Grandma, good night," Delilah said and bowed to her. Then she bowed to the king and queen without looking at them. She left the dining room hurriedly. Amanda, the former queen, Everett's grandmother, stared at Delilah until she left the dining room. "Did you see Mom? Your grandson took a woman like her. She looks poor and her rank is so cheap. He lives with her, that's his matter. But how can he make her do it and force us to have dinner at the same table as her?" the king asked his mother. He was Alfred Wilson, the Alpha King of this kingdom. His queen, Azurnia Wilson, glared at him. "How can you say that it's his matter? It's our matter too. We cannot let him slip away from our hands." Amanda coughed. Azurnia offered a glass of water. Amanda drank water. Then she said, "You two both know, he is not in your hands anymore. He slipped away 20 years ago. It's all because of you two. Now you two stop pretending as if you care for him. He is a leakin. He knows everything." Amanda paused as she looked at her son and daughter-in-law. "Or are you two afraid that he will take Maverick's place?" "Mother, it's not like that. How can it even be possible? He is not interested in the kingdom. He is a beast. Beasts can only live in the jungle. So we are worried about nothing. It would be good for you if you set up your mind as soon as possible," Alfred said and left the room. After him, Azurnia also left. Amanda stared at her plate sadly and muttered, "The day he will start to take interest in the kingdom, who will save you all from him that day?" Everett walked back and forth into the bedroom. Delilah kept looking at him while sitting on the bed. He looked grim. He kept moving his neck side by side. His eyes kept changing colors from black to orange as if he was preparing to kill someone. Delilah stared at the man. To her surprise, she was not feeling scared. In fact, she was feeling worried about him. "Are you okay?" she stuttered a little. He looked at her and tilted his head. He started to step towards the bed. She bit her tongue. She again hit the hammer on her head. "Why did you call me by my name at that time?" "That time, I forgot." She could not complete her sentence. He hovered over her body and she almost lost her voice in fear. "Forgot that you are my slave?" Delilah shook her head. "No, I thought you didn't want to stay there. So you called my name willingly?" Delilah stared at his dark black eyes. She was afraid that when it turned orange again, he would kill her. "I am sorry, Master," she whispered and closed her eyes. She felt his hand brush her collarbone. She opened her eyes immediately. She was stunned when he came close to her face. "Just because I called you my woman, don't start daydreaming about this beast." Delilah rested her head on the bed while gazing at him. "What if I say, I am already dreaming about you?" she said in her mind but did not dare to let out. Her heart started to beat faster. However, he didn't stop there. His hand grabbed her waist and he decreased the distance between their bodies. "Stop looking at me like that. I will ruin you," he muttered while glaring at her. His face was very close to her face. She took the chance and touched his left cheek. She heard his growl and his cheek started to burn. "Ah ah 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 ah." She screamed not because she felt any burn but because her cheek looked burning like meat burning in fire. He moved away from her and she sat up immediately. "Everett, how many times have I warned you?" He yelled at her while glaring at her with his orange eyes. "I am sorry," she apologized. Her eyes never left his cheeks. He looked around the bedroom and tightened his fists. "This chamber saved you today, otherwise I would have killed you." Delilah was confused but she shook her head. "Please forgive me," she said as tears rolled down her cheeks. He glared at her but she felt his eyes become softened. He averted his eyes from her and said, "Keep quiet and sleep." She saw his face become normal again. So she nodded her head and lay on the bed. She closed her eyes and heard him. "This woman is crazy. Who knows when I will get out of control and kill her." His brother. When Delilah woke up, it was early morning. She sat up and yawned. She looked beside her. As usual, an empty bed. She sighed and got out of bed. She strode to the bathroom but saw a beautiful bottle green-colored dress on the couch. She headed to the couch and touched it. "Who put this dress here?" She thought for a moment, then realized that Grandma sent it. Because she told them that she had arranged everything for them. She took the dress and went to the bathroom. After taking a shower, she wore the dress. She went out and looked at herself in the big mirror. She looked like someone else. How could beautiful clothes change someone like this? People said right. An appearance can change the whole person. But what about their hearts? Valueless? She asked herself. Then she combed her hair nicely. She had never worn a pretty dress like that before. She liked it. She came out of the room and walked to Grandma's room. She saw a middle-aged man checking on Grandma. She understood that he was the royal doctor. She entered the room and closed the door silently but paused when she saw Everett was also there. How could she not see him? She stepped forward and he turned his head to her. His eyes lowered down and saw her from head to toe. Delilah blushed and looked away from him. "My child, good morning," Grandma said to Delilah. "Good morning, Grandma," Delilah replied back. She smiled at her. "You look so beautiful. This dress suits you," she said to Delilah. Delilah smiled shyly without saying anything. "Who gave you this dress?" Everett asked her coldly. She was stunned. "It was lying in the cold. I sent this for her." Grandma interrupted her and said. "You already sent me so many clothes. I didn't like them and threw them away. Now you started to give clothes to her," Everett said. Delilah remembered the branded clothes in the cabinet of the wooden house. So all those clothes were sent by Grandma. She thought. How can she wear the same dress after washing up? So I arranged one for her. Everett did not say anything more about this matter. They waited for the royal doctor to finish. When he finished checking, Everett asked him, "Where is the report?" "Report? Don't you have her report?" "Yes." The doctor stuttered. He could not forget who was standing in front of him. Everyone knew about him in the palace. But they had never seen him in his wolf form. So they believed most of the things about him were lies. He was a Lycan, but he may not be that powerful, or he might not have that strength. That was why he lived in the forest. Everyone's thoughts were different until they met him in person or met his wolf's eyes. The doctor handed the report to Everett while thinking about how Everett would read it because he was an uneducated beast. Everett took the report and gave it to Delilah. Delilah was stunned by Everett's action. "See if everything is okay or not." "What? What?" Didn't I make you a nurse and let you handle the most powerful diseases? Delilah's eyes widened. Her mind was out of the process. She took the report and started to read. She glanced at the doctor, who looked nervous. She is having breathing problems, so you gave her an oxygen mask most of the time? She asked him. The royal doctor felt offended by her. You are a nurse. How can you ask questions about my treatment? Delilah shook her head. No, doctor. I am just asking. Don't ask anything. I am the royal doctor. Even the king and queen took treatment by me. The doctor proudly said. Amanda glanced at Delilah and asked, Is there any problem, my child? No, Grandma. It's just you can have breathing problems for different causes. An oxygen mask is not the only solution, but it was just a temporary aid. Everett glared at the doctor. What is she saying? Is it true? My prince, your grandma needed an oxygen mask. What a minute. Delilah spoke out. You feel pain all over your body and there are a few blood lumps in your skin. Delilah asked Grandma. Grandma nodded her head. Yeah, the doctor told me that this disease is an unknown disease. There is no treatment for that. Delilah looked dumbfounded. But that's how Everett stopped her by grabbing her hand. You can go now. Everett said to the doctor. Pardon. You can go now. Yes, my prince. The doctor sighed in relief and bowed to him. Then he left Amanda's room. Everett locked the door and asked Delilah, what happened to her? Delilah did not understand why he sent the doctor away, but she replied, It's called hereditario. Hereditario? Amanda asked. Yes, Grandma. I am a nurse and I have a patient with this disease. She is sick, but there are a few potions that our head doctor managed personally to treat the patient. Delilah replied. Head doctor? Amanda asked confusingly. One of my friends. Everett replied. You have friends? You never told me. How can you tell? You never come to meet me. Amanda complained. Stop complaining like a child and listen to her. Grandma, can I see the blood lumps in your body? Amanda nodded and pulled up her sleeves. Delilah gasped when she saw blood clots. You need potions. You will be okay soon. Don't worry. Our head doctor, Connor, is a very great doctor. He had treated many patients before. I am very new, but if he checks on you personally, you will be fine for sure. I can't believe there is a treatment for me. I was hopeless with the disease, my child. Grandma said and smiled sadly. Delilah looked at Everett. He did not look impressed with how Delilah talked about his friend. Call Connor to check Grandma. She said to him. He can't come here. What? You have to check and give her what she needs. Me? She was surprised. But it was true that she was taking care of the teenage girl who was affected by the disease. I need to go to Connor to ask him about it. Now how can I give just any potion to her? Delilah asked. When I will send Thompson to give you new clothes, give the potion to him. Grandma spoke out. Delilah nodded as she found a way to give the potion. It's good that you are not dying now but a few years later. So I am leaving now. Everett told his grandmother. Amanda laughed and shook her head. You will never change, Everett. Everett looked at Delilah and she nodded to him. What about breakfast together? Amanda asked. Not going to do it again. One thing you should always remember clearly. Don't tell anyone about your treatment. Not even your son and daughter-in-law. Everett warned Amanda. Amanda nodded at him. I won't. Delilah was perplexed as to why Everett told Grandma not to tell anyone. Isn't it a piece of good news that Grandma will be fine and there is a treatment for her? Then why not share it with others? Everett and Delilah went downstairs. Amanda slowly followed them, supported by her maids who came to help her. Alfred and Isania looked at Everett and stood up from the couch. Are you leaving? Isania asked him. Everett did not reply to her and kept walking. Delilah could not help but follow Everett while lowering her head. When she reached the main door, she bumped into Everett's back. Ouch! She stepped backward and massaged her forehead. Her head was down so she did not see that Everett had stopped walking. She raised her head and saw another man beside Everett. He stopped Everett from going. Well, who is at home? My big brother. The man said. He did not look much younger than Everett. But since Everett had mullet hair and that man had short hair, he looked younger than Everett. Big brother, why didn't you inform me before coming? I would love to spend some time with you, he said while smirking at Everett. Everett looked calm. There was tension between the two brothers. Maverick, your brother is leaving. He came here to see your grandma. Isania said. I see. He muttered, then his eyes fell on Delilah who was standing behind Everett. Who is this young lady? He asked as his eyes checked her up and down. Amanda spoke out, Maverick, she is your brother's woman, Delilah. Maverick frowned when he heard that. My brother's woman? A beast can have a woman? Nice. Delilah glanced at Everett who stared ahead outside carelessly. Let's go. Delilah whispered. She did not want him to get humiliated by this royal family. Every time they called him a beast, she felt uneasy in her heart. He was not a beast but a werewolf like them. Maverick heard Delilah and chuckled at her. But he did not look pleased. Looks like you are really after my big brother. And my brother is also thinking about something that he should not think about. Everett broke the silence and turned his head to him. None of your business. Maverick smirked, then why don't you get a mate for yourself? Havana, then why don't you get a mate for yourself? Delilah looked at Everett to hear his answer. Was it possible? Would he ever mark her as his mate? Everett scoffed at Maverick. Why are you always so curious about me? If you are so interested, then come to my forest at once. I will answer you at that time. He paused and glanced at the king and queen. One more thing, I am just trying to keep myself calm for that old lady. So don't force me to get back to myself. Otherwise, those rumors about the beast are not false. A man who can kill his own mate can kill you too. Others looked stunned by his words. Maverick glared at him. The day you try to attack my family, your head will be in my hand, beast. Maverick gritted. Maverick! Amanda yelled at her grandson. Everett laughed and replied to Maverick. We'll see. Everett glanced at his grandmother the last time and then left the royal palace while grabbing Delilah's hand. Delilah kept staring at Everett. Why did his brother just say such cruel words to him? Why does he want to kill him? Delilah bit her lip and looked away. She was sad, very sad. Why am I feeling so sad inside my heart? I am feeling angry at myself that I reacted to him like that before. He is mad at me now. I want to know him. I want to be with him now. I don't care about his rank or wolf. I just want him now. She could kill all the fear inside her and be with him. He must be really upset about what his family said. She thought and stopped her steps. Everett turned to her and asked, What happened? You want to live there? Delilah shook her head and lowered her head. Let's go back. He muttered and dragged her with him. They came out of the palace area. Delilah saw the old man who took them to the palace, standing there with that carriage. He opened the door for them. Delilah quietly got into the carriage. When she saw the door of the carriage was about to close, she stopped it by taking hold of the door. Are you not coming? She asked Everett. Everett shook his head. I have some work to do. Delilah looked at him with a pair of sad eyes. Where are you going? He looked into her eyes. Don't try to escape. I will be back at night. He said and closed the door shut. Delilah stared at the door. When she felt the carriage was starting to move, she moved to the window and tried to look at Everett. She could see him going the other way. Didn't he always stay in the forest? Then where would he go alone? Did he know someone there? Delilah sighed and looked at the changing scenery through the window. Her life was messed up before. But now, it had become unpredictable. She did not know what was happening to her. How she came to this route where she knew there was no future at all. The way she wanted now was something she could not explain to herself either. What she wanted was something she would never get. When the carriage was crossing the village where she worked, she closed the small blind of the window. She did not want anyone to see her going to the forest. When the carriage stopped, the door opened and Delilah got out of the carriage. Thank you, Delilah said to the old man. The old man smiled at her and nodded. I am the butler of the old lady. I usually come here to talk with the prince about the palace and the old lady. So there is nothing to thank for. Delilah was amazed but nodded back at him. She entered the wooden house and went to the bedroom. She changed her clothes and lay down on the bed. All the things that happened in the palace came to her mind. The way Everett's parents insulted her, that might be normal for the royal people. But how could they mock Everett? Why didn't they convince him to stay with them? Why was he so angry at his family members? Delilah remembered Everett telling her once that his parents were dead. Why did he lie to her? Why did his brother talk about killing him? Delilah pulled her hair. Arg! She groaned. Her head was hurting thinking about so many things. Her mind was exhausted. She forced herself to get up and went to the kitchen. She was hungry. She made something hurriedly and ate it. When it was late at night, Everett came back. Delilah looked at him and asked, You came back late. I told you I would be late. Delilah nodded as she saw him going to the bedroom. When she saw him coming out of the bathroom, she asked, Dinner? I am not hungry. But let's have dinner. I won't repeat myself. He interrupted her and went to the bed to sleep. Delilah did not have her dinner because she was waiting for him. When he said he would not have dinner, she lost her appetite. That night she also did not eat anything and went to sleep. Where were you? Delilah whispered. She knew he would not answer her or scold her, but still she gave it a try. To find someone. Someone? Did you find that someone? No, but soon. He replied. His eyes were closed. She glanced at him in the dark. She wanted to apologize to him for how she behaved all those times. She realized her mate wanted to cage her as a tool and he might have sold her to others after using her. So whatever it did was right. Her mate even cheated on his fiancé. He was not a good person. And Everett set her free by killing him. Every impression of Everett was starting to change in her mind. What she found scary yesterday, now she had started to feel good today. Everything he did looked fine to her right now. The next day, Delilah was making breakfast while glancing at the stairs. When she woke up today, she saw him in the bed. That was not what he usually did. He was sleeping peacefully, which mesmerized her mind. She came to make breakfast and from then she was waiting for him to come down. She wanted to have a good conversation with him. She would ask him about his family. There is no hurry, Delilah. Let him sleep. It's very rare that he sleeps for a long time. It's good for his health. Delilah was done making breakfast and lunch. She would go to the hospital, so she prepared lunch too for Everett. She was wiping her hands and was about to come out of the kitchen when she felt something rush like the wind and went to the main door. She saw it from the glass beside the door. Who? She asked and headed to the door. She slowly opened the door and looked around. She felt something pass her and entered through the door. She stepped back in fear. She felt scared though Everett was sleeping in the bedroom of the house. She slowly turned around and asked, "Who?" A woman suddenly came in front of her and she gasped. The woman looked young and beautiful. She frowned at Delilah. Delilah asked, "Who are you?" The woman narrowed her eyes and asked Delilah back while pointing her finger at her, "You tell me first, who are you?" "I am Delilah." "Delilah? Delilah who? And what are you doing here? In this house? Who let you come in?" She threw a bunch of questions to Delilah. Delilah was startled by her sudden inquiry. She did not know who the woman was and why she had come to the wooden house with such confidence on her face. "Where is he?" the woman asked. "Who?" "The owner of this house. He is sleeping." Delilah mumbled with confusion. "Sleeping? Does he even need sleep?" she asked as if she could not believe it. "Why are you making noise?" They heard a voice coming from the stairs. Delilah saw Everett coming downstairs. She could see his wet hair, which told her that he had taken a shower just now. Everett came down and looked at the woman. "Still noisy?" he muttered. The woman did not reply to him and directly ran towards him. She hugged him tightly and said, "I can't believe I am seeing you again." Everett patted her back and they broke the hug. Delilah could not believe her eyes that Everett had just hugged that woman back. Didn't he always tell her not to touch him? Then why did he hug that woman? "Brother told me you came to my house yesterday. Is it true?" the woman asked. "Yes, Havana. I know you can't live without me," she said and chuckled. Delilah saw both of them talking while chuckling. She felt like she became a third wheel watching them from a little far. "Havana? Who is she?" "It's about his mate Havana." "Who is she?" Delilah turned around and closed the door. She glanced at them. She did not like how they were talking to each other. "Everett, who is she?" Havana asked Everett while pointed at Delilah. Delilah pouted when she heard the woman calling Everett's name without any fear. He did not even stop her from calling his name. "I can't believe you are living with another person. Is she your maid?" Havana said as she glanced at Delilah. "No, she is my slave." Havana looked stunned, which did not go unnoticed by Delilah. "Slave? You mean she is here for your house chores, right?" Havana asked and chuckled awkwardly. Everett glanced at Delilah who looked at him back. "No, she is not my maid but a slave," he said again. His answer didn't change, nor did he explain anything. Havana stared at Everett for some time, then looked away. "I see. By the way, you have something for me to do, right? Let's talk about it then," Havana said and sighed. Delilah was mad at Everett. He told the woman about her, but he did not introduce her to Delilah. As if Delilah was not a member of this house at all, as if she was no one to him. He did not care to introduce anyone to her. She cleared her throat and let out, "Breakfast is ready. You can have it." She had already served breakfast on the table. Everett looked at the table and stood up. He turned to Havana and said, "First, have some food. You have to do many things. You must be healthy for that." Havana giggled. "I know you care for me. Stop twisting your words. Let's have breakfast together then." She stood up and went to the table with him. Delilah saw them heading to the table. She sadly turned around and went upstairs. She wore her normal dress which she wore for going to the hospital. Then she went downstairs. She glanced at the table and saw Havana talking with Everett, and he was attentive to her. "I am leaving." She spoke out in a lower tone to Everett while heading to the main door. "Did you have your breakfast?" She heard him. Her steps halted. She heard Havana telling Everett that Delilah might be fine or would have her breakfast outside. "I am not hungry," Delilah replied and left the wooden house. Delilah walked in the forest. Her heart was aching. Who is she? How can she just come and hug him? He started to ignore me after she had arrived. It's not like he always gives me his attention, but he is giving his attention to someone else, to another woman. She arrived at the hospital and went to change her dress directly. She went to the main doctor's door and knocked on the door. "Come in." She heard and entered the office. Connor was reading a file. He raised his head from the file and smiled. "Good morning." "Morning. I came here for a reason." "Let me guess. Asking me something about my friend again?" he asked. His finger tapped his chin. Delilah shook her head. "No, it's about Grandma." "Grandma? Whose grandma?" he asked confusingly. "Your friend's grandma. What happened to her?" Delilah frowned at him. "Don't you know? We went to the palace." "I know about it. But what about her? What happened to her?" "I have not met Everett in the last few days." "Then how do you know about him going to the palace?" Connor raised one brow and said, "Stop inquiring about me. Tell me what happened." Delilah sighed and sat on the chair opposite him at the desk table. "Grandma is sick. She has a symptoms of hydroterio." "What?" Delilah nodded her head. "Yeah. I checked her report." Delilah told him everything about Grandma's health issues. "So I have to give a potion so that she can recover well?" he asked. "Yes. But if you go and check yourself, it would be better for her." Connor shook his head. "I can't go there." "Why?" "Curious girl. There are so many things that we can't share. So wait and let me think before giving you a potion." "When will you give me the potion?" "The day after tomorrow. Because I have to ask for it to some witches." "Do you know witches?" "Well, we are friendly with them. So they agreed to help us." Delilah nodded and stood up. "Then I am going to my work." "Yeah." Delilah left the office and went to the cabin on her schedule-wise. However, when she entered the cabin she saw an angry Lily. "Miss Winters." She greeted Lily. "Where were you?" Lily asked her. "I went to talk with the head doctor." "How many times do I have to remind you that you are under me? You have to ask me before going to the doctor." Delilah was quiet. She could not explain why she went to meet Connor. It was about a royal matter and related to Everett. "I will remember that, Miss Winters." She replied and dismissed the matter there. Lily could not get another chance to scold her. She sent her to the woman she had checked before. Delilah proceeded to check on the woman and saw her sleeping. She recalled the woman talking about her brother. Delilah touched her necklace. It reminded her of what the woman said. Her brother made that for a man. Delilah now clearly understood who she was talking about. She was talking about Everett. Everett gave her the necklace to protect her. It was not a simple necklace. It was special. Did he care about her? The woman opened her eyes when she felt someone checking her pulse. She was stunned when she saw Delilah. You. Hello. How are you? Delilah greeted. I am good. I came back here to admit again. The woman chuckled. Don't worry, you will be discharged soon. I hope so. What about you? She asked Delilah as she tried to sit up. Delilah helped her to sit up. What about me? Delilah asked. How are you? Delilah heard her and saw her looking at her necklace carefully. Delilah tried to hide it with her hair and replied, Yeah, I am fine. How is your day going? I thought you would not continue working here. Delilah frowned her brows. Why? Nothing, you are alive. That's a big relief. Delilah was confused by her words. She called and asked, What about your brother? How is he? The woman's eyes widened. You remember what I told you that day? Yeah. The woman looked sad. He never came back. He is paying. I told you, didn't I? Yes. Delilah replied, but curiosity was killing her. She injected her with a potion and sat beside her. Can you tell me what he is paying for? What did his wife do? The woman stared at Delilah for some time and smiled. You got to know about him. Am I right? What? You know who he is? Delilah looked away. She did not know what to answer. This woman and his brother knew Everett. On the other hand, her mind was going crazy the whole day thinking about what Everett was doing with that young woman. The way they talked, they looked very close. You are right. She whispered. The woman sniffed. She stared at the blank wall for some time, then turned her head to Delilah. Are you living with him? Delilah thought about what Everett told her. He warned her not to say anything about her living with him. She closed her eyes. You didn't tell me anything about you. I am sorry I have to break the promise to learn about you. She thought and spoke out, Yes. Do you know about his dead mate? The woman asked her in a lower tone. Yes, I do. Then how can you stay with him? Aren't you scared of him? Delilah lowered her head and stared at the white bed sheets of the hospital bed. I was afraid of him at first. But not now. You are braver than he thought about you then. Delilah looked at her. Can you tell me about him? How does your brother relate to him? I am afraid he will kill me. In fact, I was scared when I saw the necklace on your neck. I thought I should have left the hospital and stayed away from you. But because of my health problems, I had to come back. Delilah bit her lip. Why would he kill her if she talked to her? Can you tell me about your brother? The woman sighed and said, My brother is a good man. He is old but at the same time very young. Because he is a wizard with a lot of power. However, he is loaded with debt. Prince Everett does not allow him to come out of the forest. He has been given him punishment for what his wife did. Delilah asked her with a courageous tone, What did his wife do that he is still paying for? The woman looked into her eyes and replied, It's about Prince Everett's mate. Havana loves him. It's related to Prince Everett's mate. His mate? Delilah asked. She wanted to know about his mate all the time. Yes. The woman replied. What about his mate? The woman looked at her as she scanned her expression. First tell me, have you found your mate yet? This woman asked her the same question before. That time she did not get her mate. But now, she knew who her mate was and what happened to him. No. Delilah replied calmly. She could not tell others about what happened to her mate. She could not tell others that Everett killed him because that man wanted to rape her and wanted to make her a tool. The woman looked worried. I am afraid he will not be there if you go with your mate when you find him. I don't want to go with anyone either. The woman gasped. Young lady, have you lost your mind? Are you sure that you know everything about him? He killed his mate. He can kill anyone in this world. He will never do that with me. Delilah said to herself. Though he might not like her, he always protected her, he also wanted to stay with her, that was why he always warned her not to escape from him. Looking at how Delilah was silent, the woman thought Delilah was regretting after telling the sentence. She smiled and patted her head. I am an Omega like you. I know Omega life is not easy. But you have to be strong. You are not safe. Delilah shook her head. I am totally safe, Aunt. I am in the danger that everyone is afraid of. Then what can harm me? The woman chuckled. Young love is really something. I saw it when my brother fell for that woman and now look at what he is doing. Don't become like my brother. Aunt, you haven't told me about his mate yet. The woman became quiet. She was thinking if she could tell Delilah something or not. My sister-in-law, the lead witch, was very powerful. Prince Everett's mate was one of her students. She was learning witchcraft from her. But there was something she got to know about and did not like, so he attacked the witch. My sister-in-law was not less powerful, she also attacked him with her power. Then something happened that took my sister-in-law's life and made my brother lonely in his life. It was a sad story. Did Everett kill the witch? Then why did he kill his mate? What about him? Why did he kill his mate? The woman raised her brows. I don't know about that. It's he, who can tell you the reason. He never gave an explanation to others because he lives alone in the forest. But I can tell you. He has his people. He lives alone, but he is not alone. Delilah was bewildered. What do you mean? Nothing. I can tell you one thing. Please don't tell him about me. Don't tell him that you met someone and talked about him. He will hunt me and kill me. I met him 5 years ago to beg him for my brother. But he warned me that if I tried to convince him again, he would kill me. Delilah knew what the woman was telling her was not a lie. Indeed, Everett was a very aggressive man. Was it because of his rank? Or his leak in blood? After talking with the woman, Delilah went to other cabins. She spent half a day helping patients. Delilah. She turned around. Ron. Ron came to her. Where are you going? Having lunch in the canteen. Let's go together. Sure. It was true that Delilah was starving. She did not eat anything in the morning and worked for many hours. How are you now? Ron asked as they walked to the canteen. I am good. You? I am always fine. I think you should come for a checkup. For what? Delilah was surprised to hear him. You look pale most of the time. I think you should need an eating routine. What is that? You are a nurse. You should know that. Well, I know the diet routine. But what is an eating routine? I meant to say, you are not eating well. You should eat more. You look weak. You were sick too. Delilah thought he was talking about the night of her heat. Indeed, she looked pale and weak that night. She could not tell him that she was in her heat that night. So she just nodded her head to him. They sat at a table after ordering 2 platters for themselves. I have something to ask you. Ron spoke out. Sure. It is about our head Dr. Connor. What about him? There are rumors that you and Ron said in a lower tone, then stopped. Delilah frowned at him. Me and what? He cleared his throat. That you and him. Do you two have a relationship? Delilah looked surprised. What are you saying, Ron? No, no. I didn't say that. Those are not my words. The nurses were talking about you. They were saying that you are very close to Dr. Connor. You even go to his office without knocking. Miss Winters scolded you for that one day. Delilah stared at Ron. What would she answer? She worked there as a nurse. Why was everyone so interested in her that they were spreading fake rumors about her? Could she not live her life peacefully? Rumors are always spread by liars, don't you think so, Dr. Ron? They heard Connor's voice. Delilah turned her head and saw Connor behind her. Ron stood up immediately and apologized. I am so sorry, sir. I was just asking. Nothing else. Connor nodded his head and told him to sit down. He sat on a chair beside them. Delilah was quiet all the time. Who knew what others would start to speak about them if she talked to him again? Are you both done eating? Connor asked Ron. No, we just ordered, sir. Connor called a boy from the counter. He saw the head doctor and ran to him. Connor ordered the same platter as Delilah and Ron. When their orders were served, Delilah and Ron kept eating quietly. Connor watched Ron carefully and saw how he kept glancing at Delilah. Dr. Ron, have you found your mate yet? Ron stopped eating and looked at Connor. Not yet, sir. Do you have any other plans? I like someone. I think I would like to go with my chosen mate. Connor frowned but nodded his head. Not bad. Delilah kept eating without looking at any man besides her. It's good that I heard about your gossip. I got to know people of my hospital. They are working less and talking more. What should I do? Should I cut their wages? Ron gulped and shook his head. No, sir. I will warn everyone. Don't cut from their payment. They all have a family to carry on. It would be tough for them. Connor nodded at him. Sure. Then I can trust you. You will tell them to focus on their work, not on their head doctor. Connor said and smiled coldly. After eating, Delilah stood up. I am going back to my work. She said and started to walk. Food was still left on Ron's plate. So he could not stand up and go with Delilah. Connor smiled at Ron and stood up. He walked out of the canteen. He saw Delilah walking ahead. Why didn't you tell me about Lily scolding you? Delilah paused and turned her head to him. What would you do? I would scold her too. He replied and almost laughed but retained himself. He had prestige in the hospital which he could not lose. I didn't want that. I told her that there was nothing between us. But the nurses are spreading these types of things. Don't worry. They will not spread those again. I hope so. Delilah and Connor walked side by side. I heard Havana is back. Delilah turned her head to him. She made herself so busy the whole day that she almost forgot about that woman. You know her? Connor chuckled. Of course, I do. She is our close friend. Oh. Delilah felt somehow relaxed when she heard friend. That means she is also Everett's friend. Nothing like I was thinking. She told herself. I saw how close he is to her. Seems like they have known each other for a long time. Very long time. How long? Almost 10 years. Delilah's eyes widened. 10 years. Connor nodded his head. Delilah glanced at the passerby who was looking at her. She calmed her expression. I have never thought he could have friends, let alone 10 years are huge. She knew about him really well then. Connor looked at her and said, before Everett found her mate, Havana always went to the forest to meet him. Delilah did not like that. It was okay that they were friends, but why did that woman go to the forest to meet him daily? She came back again. Do you know why? I heard them. She said he went to her home. So she came to meet her. Connor shook his head and replied, she came back because she loved him. She has liked him since childhood but could not tell because we all became friends. She was waiting for Everett's one step to invite her into his forest. Now she has got the invitation, so she came back for him. She what? Does he know that? Delilah stammered as she asked him. Connor replied, Havana loves Everett and he knows that. Her wolf Havana loves Everett and he knows it. Something shattered inside Delilah. She gaped at Connor like a mannequin. He knows that? She asked him as she whispered. We all friends know that. But we don't dare to talk to Everett about it. We always wanted to give them privacy. But we all know that Havana was super glad when she heard about Everett's mate's death. Delilah felt gashes lumped in the corners of her eyes. She looked away from Connor. I have to go back to work otherwise Miss Winters will scold me again. Do you want me to scold her for you? She shook her head and said he did not have to do it. Delilah went back to her shift. However, her mind was somewhere else. How easily Connor told me about Havana. He was the one who convinced me to stay with his friend. How can he tell me about it like that? Why doesn't he stop Havana from getting close to Everett? Can't he see I am with Everett now? I have already spent a night with him. He calls me his slave, but does that mean he can have a girlfriend beside me? When she went to change her clothes back, she cried inside the changing room. She came out of the changing room and saw Lily was there. Lily looked furious but she froze when she saw Delilah's swollen red eyes. What happened to you? She asked. Nothing, Miss Winters. Lily coughed and said, I am really mad at you, Delilah. Miss Winters, I swear, I have no relationship with Dr. Connor. Lily nodded her head. Relax. I know that. Delilah raised her brows. You know. Lily looked away from her and replied, he called me to his office and told me that you and him, there is nothing between you two. Delilah sighed. Then why are you mad at me? Because you complained about me to him. What would he think about me? A bully. You are misunderstanding me again, Miss Winters. He heard Ron. Ron was telling me about how others were talking about me and Dr. Connor. Oh. Well, I'm. Like paused as if she was collecting her words to say something. I am sorry, Delilah. I scolded you for nothing. It's okay. Delilah said and started to pack her things inside her bag. Can I tell you something? Sure. I thought that you were with Dr. Connor and those marks were. What? No, Miss Winters. Delilah said immediately. If it was Dr. Connor, then who are you living with? Delilah's hands paused, almost trembling. He is someone you don't know. She mumbled and kept doing what she was doing. I know that. But how is he to you? Delilah sighed and looked at her. He is a good person. But what? Delilah shook her head. Nothing. He is a very protective man, that's all I can say. Lily smiled at her. That's a relief then. When will he mark you? I heard it's very tough in your life to stop yourself from marking the one you love. Since you two love each other, you should be mated soon. I told you that before. Love. Delilah whispered. Love. How can he love me? He does not even like me. Most of the women wanted to make their men fall for them through their looks and bodies. He does not like any part of mine. I am only a mere slave. He is a prince, his family also dislikes me. She thought and felt tears in her eyes again. Lily came to her and hugged her. SSSHH, don't cry. I am sorry if I said something wrong. Delilah felt that Lily was not a bad woman. She might have liked Connor a lot, so she got offended when she saw the man she loved with another woman. Now she could feel how Lily felt. Just like how she felt when she saw Everett with Havana. Delilah shook her head. He can't mark me. Lily moved back and looked at her. Why? He has his own reason. Lily looked surprised by hearing her reply. Listen to me, Delilah. You are a very young girl. You are just 20. Your whole life is waiting for you. You can't waste your time on someone who can't mark you. Delilah did not speak, only paid attention to her words. I know I cannot interfere in your life. But I have seen many girls getting ruined by alphas and betas. They fell for the wrong guys and it made their life hell. I don't want you to be one of them. So think about it. Delilah nodded her head. I am leaving now, Miss Winters. Thanks by the way. Delilah then left the hospital. She was losing her mind. She scolded herself for telling others her problem. What would she do? She did not have anyone to share her pain with. She was forbidden to tell others about anything. She was living a confidential life. She went back to the wooden house. She thought Everett would be at home. But he was nowhere to be seen. Delilah spent her time doing nothing. When it was night, she thought about going for a run. It had been many days since she had not gone for a run. She went out of the house and looked around. The darkness was the only thing to watch. She was not afraid of any beast now. She was in love with that beast. She walked to the forest and shifted. She was an Omega. Omegas were white wolves with blue eyes. All the Omegas looked beautiful, but they were the lowest rank in any pack. Werewolves were not like humans. They never fell for beauty but rank. In their world, only rank mattered. Delilah ran forward in her wolf form. She felt fresh air brushing her white fur. She stopped in front of a tree. She sat down under the tree and howled. The howl was so painful that it could make anyone cry. She put her head down on the ground and closed her eyes to take a rest while feeling the blowing wind. She heard voices. She opened her eyes and turned her head to where the sounds were coming from. She saw Everett was coming toward her, beside him was Havana. She was saying something as she looked at Delilah's wolf. Delilah stood up and looked at them. Isn't it your slave, Everett? Why was she howling like that? Such a weak creature. Hearing Havana, Delilah glanced at Everett. He was silently looking at her. He did not defend her at all. Delilah stepped back and turned around. She started to walk to that side. Hey! Where are you going? She heard Havana but she did not stop. Everett, she is your slave. Why did you give her this much right that she is avoiding you? How dare she? Let her run for a while. Everett replied while looking at the white wolf. An omega, beauty without power. You should not make her your slave. At least, you should have chosen a powerful rank. Delilah did not want to hear them more. She started to run. At first, people called her an abandoned omega. Now she had to hear about how weak she was. Where would she go? Everyone was judgmental everywhere. There was no one who could defend her. She was all alone again. It had been 2 hours since Delilah ran away from Everett and his friend. But she was lost on the way back. She forgot where she would have to go from where she was. The forest was much bigger than she thought. She was roaming around here and there. She did not find the path. She sat somewhere and started to whine. She would be happy if she lost her way when she first got to know whoever it actually was. But now things were something else. She loved him. He warned him not to escape. What would she do? Suddenly, she saw a shadow coming toward her. She looked up in her wolf form and saw the orange eyes. Her eyes became glossy. Everett was looking at her. Why didn't you go back? She was in her wolf form, so she could not speak to him. She was not his mate and he was not her pack member. So she could not talk to him in her mind link. She lowered her head sadly. Let's go. Everett said and started to walk as if he knew that she lost the way. She followed him behind quietly. Did he come to find her? When they reached the wooden house, she entered the house in her wolf form. She saw there was no one. She understood that Havana had left. Why are you not shifting back? He asked her coldly. She turned to him and stared at him. She wanted him to go back somewhere so that he could shift. She did not want to shift in front of him. Everett did not move and smirked at her. It's not like I haven't seen you like this before. Lonely Leek and Delilah's wolf looked tiny in front of him. Though she knew if he shifted, her wolf would look little that time too. When Everett saw she was not shifting, he rolled his eyes and went out of the house. Delilah shifted and ran to the bedroom. She wore her clothes and glanced at the window. She stepped toward the window. She looked down and saw Everett standing out of the house. Unexpectedly, as if he could feel her gaze, he looked up at the window and their eyes met. She looked away and went downstairs. She saw Everett entering the house. She served the dishes on the table and sat on a chair. She did not call him to come. Why would she? Every time she called him, he answered her negatively. She did not forget how he was having breakfast with his friend Havana while ignoring her in the morning. She was about to start eating when she felt him coming to the table. He pulled out the chair he always sat in, he sat down, and looked at her. She turned her head and glanced at him. He signaled her with his brows to the empty plate on the table. She blinked and nodded at him. She understood that he was telling her to serve dinner. Delilah put food on the empty plate and placed the full plate on the table in front of him. He held the spoon and started to eat. Delilah did not say anything either and they quietly had their dinner together. After washing the dishes, when she went back to the bedroom she saw him sitting on the bed. She silently got on the bed and tried to sleep. She was very upset. The way his friend insulted her, it was too much. He always said many things to her. She could take it because it was him. But his friend was a stranger. She did not have any right to talk about her wolf and rank like that. Why were you howling? She heard Everett. She turned around and looked at him. His voice was calm. Delilah thought she was dreaming that his voice was soft for once. It's nothing. She mumbled and turned back. Were you lost on the way back home? Delilah felt her heart skip a bit. Did he just call his house their home? She sat up and looked at him. He looked unconcerned, but his voice was telling the opposite. Yeah, I lost my way. Why were you howling? Were you scared? He asked as his eyes caressed her face. She looked down at the bed sheets. Her fingers were playing with the quilt that covered her body. Her silence was giving him the answer. Didn't I say not to be afraid again? Delilah remembered that he told her that if she did not escape, the beast would never hurt her. However, the beast was himself. He was talking about himself at that time. His words reminded her of the old woman she met outside of the forest. She told her that the beast always howled and they always heard that. Delilah was confused about what he was feeling at that time. I heard. She paused and thought if she should ask him or not. What? He asked. I heard you had been howling every night before. Well, were you feeling lonely? Was that the reason you howled? Everett's eyes shook a little bit. Delilah looked at him carefully. He glanced out of the window and then lay down on the bed. You should sleep now. You will be late. Delilah stared at him. She did not know why he always felt hesitant to talk to her. Why could he not feel safe with her about his secrets? Delilah asked, that woman, I heard she is your friend. He replied to her. She nodded her head. Yeah, friend. She looks very powerful. She has the power of strength. She said and laid down on her side. She thought about how she was running so fast and then entered the house in the morning. She is a gamma female. Hey! Delilah could not be more shocked. That Havana was a gamma? Gamma was a very powerful rank after the Alpha and Beta. Gammas are the warrior wolves. They knew how to fight. Most of them work as pack fighters. She is a powerful gamma female. She will be the next gamma of the kingdom. Oh, Delilah was surprised that Havana would become the next gamma. That meant she would always be with the Alpha King. Who is the next Alpha King? She asked curiously. She did not know anything about the royal family. Why? Will you start to get fancy for him? Delilah shook her head and smiled while looking at the ceiling. She was unaware that the man beside him never looked away from her face. Just curious. You have met him? Delilah was stunned. She looked at him and pointed her finger to herself. I met him? When? The man who stopped me and kept talking nonsense is the Crown Prince. Delilah's eyes widened. That was the Crown Prince. She could not believe she told Everett to leave the royal palace when the Crown Prince was talking to him. It was kind of disrespectful to him. Why are you so shocked? Everett asked. His voice was now so cold that it could freeze her. I am thinking that if I disrespected him at that time. You didn't. He deserves that. He said and turned around to the other side. Delilah was facing his back. She did not know why he was so angry with his family, but his family was not good to him either. She asked him with an act of courage. Were you living alone all these years in the forest? She thought he would not reply to her, but he did. He replied with a calm tone which felt painful for her. I am a lonely Leekan, I have been living alone since my childhood. How can I feel lonesome when I choose to be like this? Nice appearance. I am a lonely Leekan, I have been living alone since my childhood. How can I feel lonesome when I choose to be like this? Childhood. Delilah stuttered. She could feel a tear roll down her cheek. She sobbed unknowingly. He frowned when he heard that. Sleep. Delilah tried to sleep but her eyes kept hurting. She thought she had been living a painful life. But how was Everett's life before? Was it painful? She remembered that when she first came there, she could not see any food inside the kitchen. She remembered how he was punching the tree and there was no one to stop him or treat him. He has been living here since his childhood. He is a prince. What happened that he had to come here and live alone for his whole life? She stared back at him and tried to stop herself from crying more. The following days went well. Delilah forgot that Havana ever came to meet Everett and how close they were. Delilah started to open up with Everett, though he looked unbothered. She was trying her best to talk to him. Connor gave her a potion and she gave it to Amanda's butler, who came to take it. The old man always came with some clothes for Everett. However, this time he bought some for Delilah too. Delilah looked stunned that Everett's grandmother sent dresses for her. All the clothes were made of good quality. They were colorful dresses. I can't believe Grandma sent them to me, Delilah said to herself. Some dresses were lying on the bed and she caressed them with her hand. Should I wear one of these dresses? Will Everett hate it? Because he never wore his royal clothes. But none of these look royal but good and decent. I will wear it and surprise him today. Delilah wore one of the dresses. It was a brown-colored dress with a beautiful design. There was a big bow in the chest area. She looked at herself in the mirror and smiled. I hope you will like it, she whispered as if the mirror was Everett. She went out of the house not before setting up all the clothes inside the cabinet. When she reached the hospital, everyone was looking at her. She went to the changing room when other nurses were staring at her in awe. Delilah, you are looking very different today. Yeah, she is looking really beautiful. Your dress. It's so beautiful and well designed. Hey! How did you manage to get this beautiful dress? All the nurses were complimenting her. Some of them asked questions. Delilah smiled at them awkwardly. How would she answer them? She felt it was a bad decision to wear the dress and came to the hospital. It grabbed so much unnecessary attention. Her boyfriend gifted her for sure. Everyone heard Lily. Her boyfriend. Nurses started to whisper but Lily glared at them. Go to your work. They nodded and went back to work. Delilah looked away. She thought about Everett. My boyfriend. Is he my boyfriend? He said that Havana is his friend. That means he has no one. He called me his woman in front of his parents. Does that mean he is my boyfriend? Her cheeks turned red. Lily noticed that and smiled at her. You are blushing. What happened? He gave you a new dress. No, it's from his grandma. Lily looked shocked. She coughed. Oh wow. He seems to be serious about you then. He even told his grandma about you. That's so nice of him. Delilah did not say anything and went to change her clothes into her nursing uniform. Delilah started to work to her schedule wise. In her free time, she met Ron. Ron told her that she was looking beautiful when she entered the hospital. She was surprised that he saw her that time because she did not see him. Or maybe she was lost in Everett's thoughts. Delilah, I have something to tell you. Delilah nodded at him. Sure. Say. He shook his head. No, not today. I will tell you tomorrow. Are you free tomorrow? Free. Yeah, after our shift, can we talk for some time? Delilah thought about it for a few seconds then asked, is it about something serious? It's very serious. It's about me. Delilah nodded. Okay. We can finish our shift early then. Actually, I have to go back before the sky gets dark. No worries. Ron assured her. She went back to her shift. The whole day of work with new experiences, Delilah got to know about the new diseases and potions. She liked to help patients and cure their illnesses. It was time to go back. Delilah changed into her new dress and went back to the forest. She was nervous about how Everett would react when he would see her in this dress. Will he get angry? It kept chanting in her mind. She pushed the thoughts from her mind and stepped toward the wooden house. She frowned when she saw the door was not locked. She opened the door and closed it behind her. She heard sounds from the kitchen. A head peeked out from the counter and Delilah stepped backward. Then she realized it was Havana who was working in the kitchen. What? Why do you always look so scared? Havana asked her. Delilah gulped and replied, you always popped up in front of me all of a sudden. So? You are living with a Leakin prince whom everyone calls a beast. How can you just look like a scared cat? Havana let out while doing something with vegetables. What are you doing? Delilah asked. Havana paused and looked at her. Do you think I need you to give you an explanation? Delilah thought it was her home too. So she wanted an explanation. It is my home too. Havana looked shocked but then she broke out with a laugh. What did you just say? Your home? Pfft. Delilah ignored her and walked to the stairs. She did not want to get more insulted by Havana. She listened to her from behind. He made you his slave, not his lover. His lover is me and even his maid could not take him away from me. Delilah stopped and turned to her. But Havana kept talking. Don't forget your place because Everett is only mine. He is mine. Don't forget your place because Everett is only mine. The cold air grazed Delilah. She frowned at Havana. Why are you saying this? You are his friend. A very good friend. So what? Havana asked and folded her arms. He thinks of you as his friend. Havana got mad hearing that. She ran toward her and glared at her. How dare you talk about our personal matters? He is my friend and I am his lover. I love him and only him. No one can take my place which I grabbed in his heart. Delilah was startled when she heard that. Listen, girl. You are much younger than me. I don't want to attack you because he made you his slave. He is a strong man, he also has some needs and desires. Maybe that's why he made you his slave. But always remember that he will only take your body, but he will never accept your heart. Delilah clutched her dress. Why was Havana saying those things to her? She did not even tell her that she loved Everett. Havana chuckled as she looked at her expression. You are so naive. That's why you enter the forest. You don't even know him properly. Delilah thought about whether she really did not know Everett. Didn't she know about him? Didn't she meet with his family? Then how could she not know him? You are living like a maid in this house. You are working for him and he is paying you by letting you stay at his home. He is a lone wolf. He needs someone to do his house chores so he lets you stay. Hearing Havana, Delilah shook her head. Havana did not know how she spent the nights with Everett, she did not know they always slept in the same bed, and she did not know how they had their meals together. She was not just a maid or slave. She believed she had also created a place in his heart. I know him. Delilah muttered. Don't make me laugh more. Don't even think I am feeling insecure about you living here with him. Because he is a prince. A prince can have many slaves. Though he is living in a forest, his royal blood cannot leave him. Delilah became silent. Havana's words were going over her head. Havana schemed at her from head to toe and her eyes narrowed. Where did you find this type of dress? Delilah did not answer her. She was just listening to her. I am telling you. You cannot get his heart. He did not even care for his mate and killed her. I am the only woman who can get close to him. He gave me permission to come to this forest at any time I wish. I am the only one. What can I do for you? Delilah asked her. She broke the silence because what could she do if Havana thought Everett always loved her? You can leave this forest. What? Delilah looked at her in horror. What are you saying? Havana glared at her. Why are you so surprised? Shouldn't you be so happy about that? Who can live in a forest like this? I will set you free. After that, you can live your life as you wish. You can also have your mate. Delilah smiled at her. He killed my mate. He what? Havana asked loudly. Havana got more insecure. She could not believe her ears. First, Everett let her stay with him as if they were a couple. Now he killed her mate? Why? So that she will always stay with him. A heavy flow of rage rushed into Havana's heart. When Everett found his mate used to come and meet Everett. However, Havana never saw his mate living with him like this. He never let his mate get close to him. Because he did not trust anyone. However, the way he trusted Delilah and her cooking food, Havana was thinking that they even spent nights together too. He killed your mate? Why? Havana asked as she calmed herself. Delilah saw her reaction. She somehow felt good. Until now, Havana only humiliated her, but now Havana had started to feel insecure about her. Because he does not want me to escape. What do you mean? He told me, I am not allowed to leave him. I have to be with him forever. Havana was taken back. She stared at Delilah for a few minutes without saying anything. Delilah thought Havana was planning to kill her. She said, I am going to the bedroom. If you want something, please let me know. Wait. Havana stopped her. She grabbed her arm and pulled her outside. Where are you doing? Delilah asked her. Havana did not reply to her. Delilah felt scared that Havana would hurt her. She struggled in her hold but she was like a stone. If Delilah did not know about Havana's rank, she would be shocked now by Havana's strength. Where are you taking me, Havana? She yelled at her. Shut your mouth and come with me. You don't know anything about him. That is why you are thinking like a teenage girl. He is not as simple as you think. He has his own motives and objectives. He is alone, but at the same time, he is not. Delilah could not understand what Havana was telling her. But she stopped struggling. Havana took her on a way in the forest that she had never gone before. The dark forest looked darker inside. Delilah saw a flash of flames from afar. Then she heard some sounds. Havana let her hand go and said, Go and see with your own eyes. Delilah stepped forward and saw a few men showing their bare chests looking at a man. That man was blindfolded. Everett. Delilah let out a whisper. She saw, one by one, those men were throwing wooden stakes toward Everett and he was trying to dodge. She saw a man target the left side of Everett's chest and threw the stake at him. Delilah's eyes widened. Everett! Her wound Everett! Delilah screamed. She saw the stake piercing his abdomen area as he turned to the side where Delilah screamed from. Delilah started to cry and ran to him. Another man threw another stake and Delilah did not notice it. She ran towards Everett as she saw his blood coming out of his stomach. She was about to go close to him when a stake pierced her arm. Ah! She fell to the ground and screamed in pain. Everett took off his blindfold and looked at Delilah, who was on the ground now. Everyone looked shocked. How did this girl get in? One of them shouted. Everett bent down and Delilah looked into his eyes. Everett, your wound. She tried to talk to him in pain. During that hurtful time, she was still thinking about Everett. Everett pulled out the stake from his stomach and threw it to the man, who threw it at him before. The man caught it immediately. Everett looked at Delilah's hand. Who told you to come here? How did you come here? Everett, your wound, shut up! He yelled at her while glaring at her. He looked angry. Delilah could not stop crying. Her hand was getting numb from the pain. She felt him pulling out the stake. It hurts. She wept in pain. Everett pulled out the stake in one go. She almost lost her voice. She was losing her blood. Her wound looked worse. She was seeing dark everywhere and lost her consciousness. Everett stared at Delilah. He could not believe she just came between his training. He was in training a moment ago. His men were throwing stakes and he dodged them. But when he heard Delilah's scream, he lost his concentration and one of the stakes pierced his stomach. However, he felt her running towards him. So he opened the blindfold immediately. He was late because she had already been injured by one of the stakes. He got mad at her. It was dangerous and she should not have come here. What surprised him was, she was wounded yet she still thought about his wound. He yelled at her and pulled out the stake in just one pull so that she did not have to feel more pain. When Delilah lost her consciousness, he glared at his men. Why didn't you stop when you heard a scream? He asked them. They kneeled in front of him. My prince, isn't it the rule? We cannot stop in the middle of a war even if someone screams to stop. Is this a war? No, but everything happened so fast that we could not understand. Please accept our apology. Everett did not reply to them, which made them scared. They saw him carrying the young woman in his arms. They were stunned. They had never seen their prince so close to any woman except his friend Havana. But Havana was the soon-to-be Gamma. She trained with men. It was natural. They could not believe their eyes after seeing the young woman in his arms as if she was something soft or a feather for him to carry. Who is she, my prince? Everett did not stop but replied, my woman. The sounds of gasping were heard there. Whoever threw the stake to her, get ready to pay for it. He walked to the way of his house and heard cries of the man behind him. Everett Havana's voice came to his ears. She came out from behind a tree. Everett turned to her. Did you bring her here? Havana gulped as she saw his furious face. He had never talked to her like that before. She could see his fierce eyes. No. Then how did she come to our secret place, Havana? He gritted his teeth and asked. I think she followed me here. Everett stared at her. He knew Havana was lying to him. You will become the Gamma, how will you protect your king if you cannot even hear footsteps who follows you behind? Everett saw her lowering her head. I am sorry, Everett. I did not know this would happen. Why did you take her here? He asked and glanced at Delilah's arm. Blood was rolling down her hands. Havana coughed and said, she is losing her blood. Let's go back fast. Havana walked ahead as if showing him the path. Everett stared at her back for a moment, then walked that way. He reached the wooden house in a minute, before Havana. He had so many powers that he usually did not use. He went to the bedroom and lay her down on the bed. He connected mind links with Connor. Come to my house. What happened? Right now. I am on the way. He heard Connor and disconnected the link. He remembered when she bandaged his hands with her clothes. So he took out a piece of clothing from the cabinet and wrapped it around her wound. He tied it tightly. Havana came to the room while puffing. She was powerful but not powerful like a Lecan. Everett's strength was unmatchable. He came so fast that Havana was shocked. She looked at Everett and saw what he was doing. Connor came and checked Delilah's wounded arm. You could have told me about the wound. I would have come with a potion for healing. Connor told Everett. Then go and come back with the potion. No, I can't. Why? Her hand has already lost so much blood. Her blood circulation would be affected if we waited for some more time. Then what do you want to do? Havana asked. Maybe healing her arm by lick. Connor replied but immediately heard a growl. They glanced at Everett. What? Connor asked. Don't dare to touch her. Everett replied with his glowing orange eyes. What do you mean, Everett? Why can't he touch her? Everett turned his head to Havana and roared, It's all your fault. Now you should go back to your home. I called you for a mission. You should focus on it, not on my woman. Havana stepped back. Everett had never been rude to her before. She cried and ran out of the house. She left the forest. Connor watched everything silently. Then he spoke out. What would you do to her? Nothing. Everett replied while looking at Delilah. Everett, I think she likes you. I don't care. I am not talking about Havana. Everett looked at Connor. What? I am talking about Delilah. She fell in love with you. She loves you. I am talking about Delilah. She fell in love with you. Everett paused for a moment but then glared at Connor. His eyes turned black again. This is not the time for jokes. I am telling you what it seems like. She loves you. Stop all of this. I am already mad at everything. Connor glanced at Delilah. She is an Omega. She is a pure girl. She always talked about you to me. She is very curious to know about you, Everett. You don't have to treat her. Just go back. I will handle her wound. Everett said angrily. Everett, she loves you. She is just like others. She is afraid of me. You didn't see how she had reacted when she saw me like this. Everett bellowed in agony. His eyes turned flame orange. His cheeks started to burn. Connor shook his head. She is a young girl. Of course she would be scared when she saw any new creature. Not a new creature, but a beast who eats people alive. Stop saying that. She is with you right now. How did she get hurt? I don't know. I am sure he thought your warriors were your enemy and attacked you, so she was ready to take your beat. Everett felt something move his heart. He shook his head. Just go. I am not in a mood right now. Connor did not want to argue, so he told Everett that he should heal her fast by licking her wound. When Connor left the house, Everett stared at Delilah for a moment. He went to the bed and sat beside her. He looked at her wound and sighed. He ripped her sleeve and realized she was in a new dress. She looked beautiful in that dress. Her pure and clean skin looked gorgeous in that brown color dress. He did not waste any more time and caressed her wound. He could see the hole where the stake pierced her arm. He licked the wound with his tongue. He had never done it for anyone before. It was something he had never thought of doing for anyone. He was a Lycan. His saliva was so effective that it started to heal her wound fast. In a few minutes, her arm was healed by him. It did not look like someone stabbed her arm before. He moved away from her arm and stared at her face for a long time. Delilah opened her eyes. She felt heavy in her head. She sat up and looked around. It was late at night. She felt hungry. She was about to get out of the bed when her eyes fell on her ripped sleeve. She stared at the sleeve and remembered everything. She looked at her arm but gasped. How can it be possible? She whispered. You are weak. Go and have your dinner. She heard Everett. He came out of the bathroom. He looked like he had just taken a shower. Everett. She stood up and ran to him. She tried to check his bare upper body. A few drops of water were falling down his chest from his wet hair. She looked at his stomach and stepped back. Your wound. Healed. Hey. She looked up at him with confused eyes. My wound has healed. What about mine? It also healed. How? My healing power is almost like humans. If I got a cut from the knife, it would take 4 or 5 days to heal. She saw Everett staring at her. She glanced at his stomach again, which was clean and clear. Didn't I tell you to go and eat? He said calmly. Yes. Then go and eat. Delilah nodded and walked to the door but stopped and turned to him. I know you are not hungry but I don't want to eat alone. Can you have your dinner with me? She asked him as if she was begging him. He looked away from her and nodded. Delilah smiled at him and went downstairs happily. Please, sit here. I am cooking something quickly. She went to the kitchen and he sat at the table. While cooking she felt his gaze on her. She did not dare to look at him. She felt it was like a nightmare when she felt stabbed in her arm. She cooked a vegetable curry and steamed rice, then served it on the table. She placed food on his plate first, then on her plate. She ate quietly and kept glancing at him from time to time. He was not a picky man. He never had any problems with her cooking. He always ate what she offered him. After eating, when they went back to the bedroom, Everett asked her, "How are you feeling now?" "I am okay. I am not feeling any pain, just a little bit dizzy. But after having dinner, I am feeling good." What? You lose blood so you will feel weak for a few days. Don't overwork. Try to come back early. He said without looking at her. She was stunned by his concern. Are you feeling concerned about me? He frowned and turned his head to her. Why did you think that? You must help me to heal my wound somehow. Now you are talking about this. It shows that you care for me. She said but whispered the last sentence. Everett was sitting on the bed. But when he heard her, he stood up and came to her. Delilah tried to gather up her courage. She was not scared of him today by asking what she wanted to ask. Havana had already told her many things. She wanted to know those from him directly. I have something to ask you. Delilah asked as she looked into his eyes. He stepped forward and she stepped back. Her back pressed against the wall. First tell me one thing. He said as he came close to her face. She felt her heart starting to race. She tried to calm herself but failed. What? She asked with a shaken tone. He smirked at her and asked, Connor told me that you fell in love with me. Is it true? Never ever dare. Connor told me that you fell in love with me. Is it true? Delilah's eyes widened. She could not believe her ears. Her heart was racing until then. But after hearing him, it skipped a beat. The wind came from the window and it brushed her hair. She felt her hair blowing in the air. She stared at him with her love in her eyes. She wanted to thank Connor. He did what she would never dare to do. Everett interrupted her. Never dare to do that. Her expression froze. What? Never dare to do that? He said again as if he was warning her. His smirking face turned into a grimace. He glared at her and alerted her. I am not a man for love. You are just a slave and should know your place. You are nothing more than that. How can you even think like that? Have you lost your mind? Do I need to remind you how you reacted when you saw my wolf? How did you react when you saw my real face? Delilah stared at him with her sad eyes. She became speechless. You cannot fall for me. I will never permit you to do that. He declared. He turned to go to the bed. But she stopped him. Your friend, Havana. She told me that she is your lover. She is right. She heard him. Everett, she whispered, and tears rolled down her cheeks. Didn't I warn you before about not dreaming what you can't have? He asked without turning back. Yes. Just live your life as a slave. This is what you wanted that night. You begged me to become my slave. I didn't force you to lose your dignity. You are right. Everett walked to the bed and lay down. Delilah went to the bathroom with slow steps and closed the door. She slid against the door and cried silently. She did not want to be heard by Everett. She sobbed while pressing her palm over her mouth. The next morning, she woke up and saw Everett was gone. She cooked as usual and went to the hospital. Today she did not wear what Grandma gave her. She came with her normal, less costly clothes. She had been working the whole day with patients. She tried to focus on the reports of patients. However, she got emotional every time she thought about what Everett told her last night. What would she do now? She fell for him. But he forbade her to fall in love with him. He was the man she gave her, the only thing she had. He was the person she wanted to live with for her whole life. But not as his slave, but as his life companion. All the things that were running in her mind for Everett shuddered. She changed her uniform and was about to leave the room. Delilah, Lily called her. Yes, Miss Winters. Delilah replied with a trembling tone. She knew if she talked more, her tears would come out soon. Are you okay? You don't look good. I am fine, Miss Winters. She replied and smiled sadly. Hey! Did you break up with your boyfriend? Hey! Didn't his grandma just give you a present yesterday? You looked happy. What happened today? Did you two fight? Delilah shook her head. No, we didn't fight, Miss Winters. I was just missing my parents. Lily felt sad and told her if she needed anything, she could talk to her. Delilah did not lie. She was actually missing her parents a lot, so she could share her pain to her mother. But her mother was not alive. She had nowhere to go and cried. She needed a shoulder to lean on. She thanked Lily and went out of the hospital. Hey! Delilah stopped and turned around. You promised me that you would give me your time. What happened to you? Ron asked, but was stunned by Delilah's miserable look. Nothing, Ron. Sorry, I forgot. It's okay. Do you have time? Delilah thought for a moment. She was not in any hurry anymore. Yeah, I have. Let's go then. Where are we going? In an eatery to eat something. I am not hungry, Ron. But I am. I didn't eat much at lunchtime. So please. Ron requested her. Okay. They went to an eatery close to the hospital. There were small cabins where couples were sitting and eating. They sat inside one. Ron ordered 2 hot pot. I told you. I am not hungry. I watched you, you ate nothing today. Delilah was surprised when she heard him. Ron asked her if she had a fever. She said she was totally fine. Ron told her to have some medicine for her health. Delilah told him she would think about it. The 2 hot pots were served by the lady who was the owner of the eatery. She was the owner at the same time, she served every dish. Thank you. Delilah thanked her. Ron also thanked her. They began to eat quietly. Delilah could feel Ron's gaze. She glanced at him. What happened, Ron? You told me yesterday that you had something serious to talk about. Yet I have. Then say it. After we finish the food. We should not talk when we eat. Delilah was amazed that Ron was telling her that. In fact, Ron was the one who always talked while eating. When it was about to pay, Ron paid the bill. Delilah argued with him to pay the bill in half, but he didn't listen to her. He said it was his treat. They went to a place where they could talk. They sat down on a seat of concrete. Delilah stared at Ron. It's been 10 minutes, I am waiting. You are expressing nothing. What happened to you? Ron looked at her and cleared his throat. I have had something to tell you for a long time. But I didn't have the courage before. But now I think the earlier I tell you, it would be better for me and us. Delilah looked in a daze. What do you mean? Ron took a deep breath and replied, I want to confess to you. Delilah, I like you. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.